Hey, I'm golf broadcaster Matt Adams. The updated and expanded second edition of my book, The Golf Round I'll Never Forget, Golf's Biggest Stars Recall Their Finest Moments, is now available. Readers can expect to march with Arnie's Army at the 1960 U.S. Open, relive Jack Nicklaus's remarkable 1986 Masters win, and be amazed by the Tiger Slam. The Golf Round I'll Never Forget, Golf's Biggest Stars Recall Their Finest Moments. Pick it up where fine books are sold, including BarnesandNoble.com and Amazon.com.
And we'd like to welcome everybody back to the Football's Family Podcast. I had a show yesterday, and I was excited to talk about Vanderbilt finally beating Alabama. That was fun for me to talk about. Today, I have a very similar fun topic to talk about. It deals with one of NFL's royalty, and I'm not going to be the one doing it. My guest will be talking. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hi, my name is Doug Villhard, and my book is called The Golden Age of Red, a novel of Red Grange.
I'll tell you what, Red Grange, I have been to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I've read several books. One of my favorite books was the NFL 100, A Century of Football. It's right over there. I'm looking, like you can see what I'm looking at. Red Grange comes up in everything that you look at to make the NFL what it is today. How is with your book, how do you approach talking about him?
Yeah. So first of all, Red Grange, the human, is very nice person, very nice, very humble. He never really wanted to be a star at all. He would have actually preferred to be behind the scenes. But what's interesting about him is he stumbled into what we know today as the first sports agent in C.C. Pyle. And this is interesting because your sports agent should be behind the scenes.
Cash and carry, yeah.
C.C. Pyle liked to be out front. So what happened was, and we can get into it more, but when Red became so famous in college, frankly at the time, as famous as Babe Ruth in college, C.C. Pyle came along and said, I think these the colleges are exploiting you. They're selling out stadiums, 67,000 in Illinois, 85,000 in Ohio State, and your fame today, we would call it name, image, likeness, but your fame is worth something, right? So it was a really interesting time, and it's happening right now. I think Red Grange is Caitlin Clark. Same thing. Caitlin Clark, very famous in college, basketball player in Iowa, right? And then she faces this decision of what to do afterward. And it was very similar at the time in that I believe she put the WNBA on the map this last year. At the time of Red Grange, pro football was only drawing about 3,000 people.
Now,
3,000.
Let me stop you right there. And I'm sorry to interrupt you, but let's clarify something. In this particular, if you've seen the movie, was it Leatherheads?
Leatherheads, yep.
Yeah, fantastic movie. Loved it. It shows how people view the NFL, or what was the AFL, AAFL, something like that. What was it before that? College was so much more important than pro. Pro was a secondary thing.
It was. College had just started packing stadiums 100 years ago, like today, actually Saturday 100 years ago, very similar. But pro football only had, like the Bears, only had like 3,000 people in the stands. And the WNBA is doing a little bit better than that, but different after Caitlin Clark. So what they were saying was, if this superstar from college would join the NFL, we could put it on the map. And one of the reasons that the NFL wasn't as popular was this was really a college game, invented in college, and not a lot of people had gone to college back then. So, and they didn't have television. They didn't have access to see it. So when Red Grange went into the NFL, he started selling out stadiums, just like Caitlin Clark has done today. And that's why you see him in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. He was a great college player. In fact, ESPN calls him the best college player ever. He wasn't as good of a pro. He was good, but he wasn't as good. The reason he's in the Hall of Fame is because he put that league on the map in terms of attendance. It was just unbelievable. What he did at the time. And so what fascinated me or attracted me to the story was how he popularized the NFL, but it was also his agent as well who made most of this happen.
Cash and carry pile. I remember that's not what CC stands for, but that's what people said it did.
That's right.
What fascinates me about him is, and you were just mentioning it, I really never thought of him as a person. Obviously he's a person, but you hear about his college, the barnstorming that they did. It wasn't necessarily they played 2 or 3 games a week sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes 4 and sometimes back to back, like playing on a Sunday and a Monday.
Oh, good gracious. How in the world does your body hold up after that?
Yeah, and remember, Red plays both sides of the ball, offense and defense. If you come out of the game, you have to stay out of the game, at least out of that half. So if you come out in the first half, you can go back in the second. If you come out in the second, you can't go back in. Like that's a professional soccer today.
That's soccer, yeah.
You can't go back in, which is what this was based on. So yeah, not only are we talking about sometimes playing 4 games a week and back-to-back days, but he has to play both sides of the ball.
And you think it's bad enough now, seeing Tua and with the concussions and people breaking legs. They didn't have the type of rules against that sort of stuff.
No, they did not, and they wore leather helmets, and they did not have very much protection. But it was even more than that, because coaches were not allowed to call in plays during the game. In fact, a coach could not stand up; they had to just sit on the bench. So what happens is you've got someone like Red Grange out there; he's really the coach on the field calling the plays. So they can't have him come out. You don't just lose your best player; you lose your assistant coach.
I have an image of him. Was he built like a track and field kind of guy?
Yeah, so he was just under 6 foot and 180, and he was considered to have almost world record speed. He was like a tenth of a second off what Olympians were. Yes, very, very much a track and field.
Okay, that's the image I have, because you don't really see when you watch the videos of him. You don't see how big he was. But I guess in that time frame, that was a pretty good sized guy playing football.
Yeah, it was, and he also had this other thing too. He had many nicknames, right? Red is a nickname. The Galloping Ghost.
Yeah.
Named. They also called him the Wheaton Iceman. So Wheaton is Wheaton, Illinois, just outside of Chicago. What his summer job was delivering ice. So we don't have refrigerators then. We literally have ice boxes. So these ice blocks are like 100 pounds. And if you live on the 3rd floor of an apartment, somebody's going to carry that up for you. And those were icemen. So at a time before they had weights and everything else, he actually had a lot of muscle definition from carrying those blocks of ice. So it's kind of fun, just the sort of lore around him too. But actually very muscular guy for the time.
He do you think that he is the reason why the NFL really kind of took off, or one of the reasons?
Yeah, so he's one of the 17 in the first inaugurated in the first NFL Hall of Fame class. And like George Halas is in there, who founded the Bears, and Tim Morrow did the Giants, and Jim Thorpe and the commissioner, lots of people. But they say the reason that Red is in there, again, is not necessarily as a player, but for popularizing the sport. And it's called the Golden Age of Red, this book, because for 2 reasons. One, they consider it to be the golden age of sports, but they also consider it to be the golden age of sports journalism too. So there was no television, but like in Chicago, there were over 40 daily newspapers, right? So very, very common. And even like in Champaign, there were 5 or 6 daily newspapers. So there's a lot of writers writing about him. And, if we could talk about that, can we talk about that Michigan game a little bit? The one that put them on the map, right? That's what they're celebrating, the 100-year anniversary of. Illinois is playing Michigan, and Michigan's the reigning national champions, just like they are today. And they're going to replay that game 100 years later in just a little bit here. But Michigan comes into Illinois having not lost a game in 2 years and given up less than 30 points in 2 years and only 1 touchdown. in 2 years. And it's very common for the scores in these games to be like 3-6. They kick the opening kickoff to Red Grange. He catches it on the 5-yard line, runs it back 95 yards. So there's the first touchdown that Michigan has really seen in 2 years. And then the rules were different. They liked field position. So instead of Michigan receiving the ball, they chose to kick it off again. A couple plays later, Red scores a touchdown, and then another one, and then another one. That's 28-0 in 12 minutes. And that's as many points as that team had given up in 2 years. So when they're writing about Red Grange in the papers, the lore of him is just crazy at that time. And that's how he became more popular than Babe Ruth. And then get this, in the second half, 2 more touchdowns and interceptions, right? So where Sports Illustrated calls it, still today, the most unforgettable moment in sports, putting up over 400 yards, back in a time like that. It's amazing.
It doesn't happen. It's hard to happen now. Gale Sayers, Gale Sayers doing what he did that one game. And we had one just a few years ago on Christmas. I think it was Alvin Kamara scoring 6 touchdowns in the game, or 5. I don't remember the exact number.
Yeah.
That's weird. That's odd. That is more of an offensive driven league. Back in the time with Red Grange, it wasn't that way, was it?
No, all they pretty much did was find the biggest farm boys possible and run it up the middle. That's pretty much what they did. And the other part that makes so I love Red. I love CC Powell, right? His agent, but I also love his coach at the time, Bob Zupke, who does not get enough credit. He had 4 national championships in 10 years, Bob Zupke. But the other coaches, in a derogatory way, they called him Mr. Razzle Dazzle, because they would just like to run up the middle. But Bob invented all these things. He invented the screen pass. This was at Illinois, the spiral snap, the flea flicker, the fake punt. And then Bob Zupke had this crazy idea that we should have a huddle in between plays. That was actually invented at the University of Illinois, same coach as Red Grange. So what happened when you're playing a Bob Zupke team, you don't know what's going to happen. They might punt on first down just to catch you off guard, and then next time they might fake punt, right? So it was really kind of like an option offense before that was called that. And last thing I'll say about that is Red was an All-American running back his 2 years. By the way, he couldn't play your freshman year. You weren't allowed to play varsity your freshman year. Only played 3 years. 2 years All-American running back, and then his senior year All-American quarterback. All-American quarterback. And all of this under this sort of genius of Bob Zupke. They figured out if Red can play quarterback, then he could run, or he could pass, or he could lateral. And it actually gave them more options to use him. So it was just a fascinating time.
So for lack of a better comparison, he was Barry Sanders, Patrick Mahomes, and Deion Sanders, and Mel Gray, all wrapped up into one.
Yeah, and throw in whoever you consider to be the best safety in the game too, because he usually averaged the majority of the tackles and also interceptions per game too. And many consider him to be the best defensive player ever, but they didn't keep stats on defense. They weren't that into defense, but he was amazing there too.
Dante Hall, golly, somebody like that.
Yeah, I know. It's just kind of hard to get your head around what an athlete this guy was.
What drew you? I know you're giving me what drew you into. Are you an alumnus from Illinois?
No, so I'm not. So it's really or I think it's interesting. I'm actually an entrepreneurship professor. So I'm a business professor.
Okay.
So I was really interested in CC Pyle and the business side of this, because what was happening was pro players were making about $50 a game. And the owner of the Bears, George Hallis, said, I love you, Red. You're amazing. We'll pay you, instead of $50, we'll pay you $500 a game. And CC Pyle said, Red, don't take that. Let me negotiate on your behalf. And 500 would have been amazing for Red. But what CC Pyle negotiated was half the gate. He said, hey, look, Bears, you're drawing 3,000 fans. With Red, you'll draw 60,000 fans let's split it. So Red Grange was actually making half the gate when he was playing. And there's a game against New York when he actually made more money in one game than Babe Ruth made all season. And Babe Ruth was there to watch it happen. So it was the economics of it that drew my attention, and the way that where we are today with college athletes and name, image, likeness and stuff. I just thought it was very interesting that 100 years ago, that CC Powell came on the scenes and said student athletes are being exploited, and we should do something about it. And that's what drew me to the story.
That's what drew you in, and just his just hearing what he did. It's funny that he. What are, again, I'm having problems drawing up the dates. When did he play pro?
Yeah, so just real quick, he was All-American in college, 23, 24, 25.
That's what
and
I
then
thought.
He played pro 26, 27, got hurt in 28 and had to sit most of that out in 29, and then played 30 through 33.
So you're talking about the time of the Yankees being huge.
Yeah, huge. Babe Ruth, like getting right when Babe was hurt, when Red was doing all this stuff in college, so that really helped. And then when Red was hurt, that's when Babe had got 60 home runs that game. So they were kind of going back and forth in the sports pages at the time.
That would be actually kind of interesting to see, and I'm sure that there's somebody out there that have done this, to see what type of draw those two people did. Obviously, you can see with Red Grange, but and I know I've read this before. Babe really did cause the Yankees just to explode. I mean, the house that Ruth built. I mean, come on.
Yeah, and the Yankees, and baseball, and this is really kind of hard to get our heads around too. But because of those guys, you hear Golden Age of Red, the book, but also Golden Age of Sports. That's when Americans really started reading sports in the newspaper. Previous to that, they were pretty much reading about World War I.
Yeah.
Sports section was like, I forget, it was like 1% of the paper or something like that. And during this period of time, it becomes 20% of the paper. So like your podcast now and ESPN, all that kind of stuff was really getting started in that era as well. And it's one thing to like sports, but we need heroes, right?
Well,
and that's
you're looking at the same time historically. You're talking about World War I. You're looking at the same time with Yankees, and of course, this is nearing the end of Red Grange's time. But the Great Depression is coming on. People needed something, to look at, and to enjoy.
Yeah, they did, and a lot of this was the Roaring 20s.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then leading into the Great Depression.
That was in 29, if I remember correctly. That's when it pretty much started. So having somebody to look at and just say, hey, this was awesome, and seeing, it's just a distraction.
Yeah, that's right. And really that's a lot about the 20s. It was like just like after World War II too, there's like a boom because the economy's roaring again. They also had this crazy thing, which was they passed some worker laws where you don't have to work 7 days a week for your employer anymore. So that sort of created weekends, and that created especially Sundays, and it created the opportunity to take a break from work and enjoy entertainment. So that all kind of hit at the right time.
That's the thing. It's just amazing how culture and society and sports kind of mesh. What are they called, the blue laws? They got rid of those.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It just all kind of hit, and the NFL back then was a Sunday sport too. With college on Saturdays. But CC Pyle, again, my guy, the sports agent. You know what he said to Red after Red did that barnstorming tour with the Bears?
No.
He said, you know what, Red? So he got half the gate throughout that. And he said, I think you're bigger than the Bears. I think Red, they were partners. He said, I think we should have our own team. So they actually formed, Red actually played for the New York Yankees football.
He did, didn't he?
Yeah. And then the NFL said, the Giants said, you can't have, I have exclusive rights tomorrow. The Giants, he said, I have exclusive rights. You can't have New York Yankees, and CC Powell said, well, we're going to do it anyway. And the league said, backed Mara and said, you can't. So then instead of just having a team, Red Grange and CC Pyle formed their own league, the AFL, American Football League, and competed with the NFL. So can you imagine a player today? Well, I guess Messi sort of does with the way that he has like ownership stake, with the Miami team, but he doesn't flat out own it. But Red not just owned his team, he owned the league that he was playing. And that is, and I love Red, but that is not the design of a 22-year-old kid. That is the design of his sports agent, 40-year-old sports agent.
If it wasn't for Red, and we're going to kind of, like I said, we're going to wrap this up just a second. I'm enjoying this, but if it wasn't for Red, take him out, take CC out.
Yeah.
Would the NFL be what it is today?
No, I think it would have, and hear me out for a second. I think it would have gone bankrupt. And then it might have started up again when television started, but it was really precarious week to week. The teams would fold, and that was in that Leatherheads movie too. Like one week you have a team, next week you don't. And that, by the way, that movie did not have Red Grange in it, but it had a character very similar to him. But that's a silly movie. They just do a lot of silly things in there, and it's not really very historical, but it is set in that time.
No, but that's the thing. You can enjoy things, but know that it's not necessarily historical.
Yeah, that's right. But you need a star NFL needed a star. It needed a Babe Ruth, and that's what Red Grange was for the NFL.
So you're talking about 1958, the Giants-Colts game was dependent upon, and I believe you. I agree with you. Dependent on the 20s. Red Grange. Yep. It took 30 years to build up to it, but without Red Grange, there would not be the lubricant to go.
No. And I do think television plays, then a factor too after that.
Would it have been neat to see television like the way it is now back then, to see how good he was?
Yeah. So the only thing that we have is they had silent film then. And another thing that made him popular was people would they said that 3/4 of Americans went to the movie theater multiple times a week, not to watch movies, but to watch the newsreels at the beginning. And they were doing that during the wars, like watching the evening news. But those newsreels had Red Grange, and they're a little bit grainy, and they run a little fast. So it actually makes him look even faster.
Yeah, I remember watching Babe Ruth. Babe Ruth got around those bases pretty quick.
Yeah. A lot of that has to do with the film speed.
Yeah. So I'm looking at this guy. I'm looking at Red Grange here. I pulled it up. Number one, he's a good-looking guy.
Yeah.
I mean, I could see why people would follow him.
Yeah, started movies too with CC Paul. Yeah.
Did he really?
Yeah, you know Space Jam, Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
Red was doing that in the 20s. He starred in 3 Hollywood pictures. Isn't that crazy? And by the way, it was silent, so he didn't have to say anything.
That's the best.
So that was helpful. Yeah.
That's the best type for. I want to look at this because they don't, like you said, they don't really keep up with stats.
Yeah.
Chicago Bears, New York Yankees, like you were saying, and Chicago Bears again. The thing about the Bears, I think he's just the perfect fit for them. It's just the location. The NFL is a Midwestern league.
Yeah. Was all in was not big cities like baseball was, right? And it needed to get there too. But the owner of the Bears, George Halas, by the way, he's a super stud. Not only did he own it, he played too.
Yeah.
It's kind of based on the George Clooney character in the movie, but he owned it. But he went to Illinois, and he played for Zupke. That's why the Bears have the same colors as the University of Illinois.
Really?
Yeah,
really?
Because he played there, and Red's from Chicago. So you're absolutely right. It was the natural fit for them.
All right. Look, I want to say this, Mr. Doug, because this is neat. Of course, this is on Wikipedia.
Yeah,
so
sure.
It's not necessarily, but I believe this is real. 2-time NFL champion. Okay.
Yeah.
2-time first team All-Pro. NFL 1920s All-Decade Team. 77 number retired. One of the 100 greatest Bears of all time. National Championship in 1923. All-American 24. Two-time American, All-American 1923, 1925. Big Ten Most Valuable Player 1924. Three-time first team All Big Ten and Illinois Fighting Illini retired. Good gracious.
Isn't it amazing? You know, another one of my favorite things is, the Four Horsemen at Notre Dame.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Guess what? Four Horsemen. Only 3 were all Americans. Why wasn't the 4th? Because he played Red Grange's position.
Because he played Red Grange.
Red Grange knocked out one of the Four Horsemen.
I didn't know that.
Isn't that crazy?
Well, okay. This is a. We'll finish with this. Thank you for coming on. This is awesome.
My pleasure.
I want 2 things from you. Okay. Well, actually 3.
Okay.
You ready? All right. Number 1, where can we get your book?
Yeah. Thanks for asking. So it's called The Golden Age of Red, and easy. You can search for it on the internet. Golden Age of Red. Amazon is probably the best place, and we have it in a couple different formats, but I love the audio format. Actually, we've got a great actor. He does different voices and such like that. And we have a chapter in the book that's kind of based on an old radio show. So it has like the sounds and stuff like that.
All right.
The audio one's really, really fun. Really fun.
I'm all about the Audible. I just finished the Killing the Witches, and I'm working on the other Bill O'Reilly book about the presidents right now.
Yeah.
I'm going through one about Constantine the Great. I'm doing all these. I just love the Audible, so I'm going to have to pick that up next when I'm done with these.
Yeah, and not everybody likes to read or reads a lot. So this can be a great way for people to get into books again through audio.
Well, when you're in the car as much as I am, you can't read. You can't really
exactly. Read. Yeah, that's perfect.
Give us one quick story about Red Grange, that kind of a teaser for your book.
Yeah. Let me think for a second. I think let's do this one for a second, and just to talk about his character for a moment. The fable, the King Arthur, the sword and the stone, right? And you know how the sword is in the stone and everybody's trying to pull the sword out to be the king, right? Nobody can get it. Knights can't get it. Everybody, other kings, everybody tries it, can't get it, right? And then young King Arthur pulls it out. Well, a young Red Grange asks his teacher, he says, why does everybody want to be king? Like, why is it just a given that you would want the burden, right, of all of that? Because his point was like, he just wanted to go to college and get a degree and get a job. Right. And his pastime, by the way, he paid tuition. They didn't have college scholarships then either. Can you believe that? Red Grange paid to be in that position.
You get paid. Yeah,
he never asked for this. But it was thrown upon him. So I wanted to tell a story of, do all superheroes want to be superheroes? Sometimes you're given a gift and you have to deal with it.
What was it? I can't remember. I don't know if it was from The Hobbit. I know Tolkien wrote it. Sometimes we don't always get to pick where we are or the situation we're in, but we get to pick what we do with it. And I misquoted that big time.
Yeah. And that's what this story is about. It's about a star who didn't want to be a star and wanted to be behind the scenes, and then the behind the scenes guy who really, the agent who really wants to be the star, and sort of the back
usually
and forth between
usually it's the other way around.
Right.
I want to, we've only communicated. Well, I don't know if we communicate. I think I've communicated through your publisher or your
publicist.
Yes, publicist. Yes. Just talking with you, obviously you're very well versed in it. You wrote a book about it, but you also seem to have a lot of passion about it. And that's what I like. Mr. Doug, you're an awesome dude. You really are neat. You're awesome. You're just neat guy to talk with, and please come back on when you get a chance. Because you're passionate about this, and obviously you're leaning forward, you're talking to me, you're just animated, and you're not going to be able to see this, but I'm just telling you, he's into this, and I'm loving it. I'm loving every bit of it. I want you And then we'll end with this. This is an upbeat, encouragement-filled show. That's my goal with this. Football's family.
Yeah.
Give me something, in your opinion, from the book or from his life. You just gave me a great one. What would be something that you can leave today that would be encouraging for people from his life or from football or from something that you can think about?
I'll give you one right here.
Please do.
So Red lived to be around 90 or so, right? So he had a long life, and people would ask him, like, look back on your life, like, what was your favorite moment of life? And this is a guy who was the biggest star in college, right? Starred in movies, put the NFL on the map. Later in life, became a color commentator on television too. One of the first of those, right? So just a revered person, right? All these awards, everything. They said, "What's your best part of life?" And he said, "It was after I was done with football. There was a 10-year stretch where I started my own insurance company, and I went to work like a normal person all day long, and I built that up." And he said everything else was like a gift that God gave me and was like out of my control, but this was something that I like did myself. And
That's
so
awesome.
so those of us that are going to go into work today, right, and tomorrow, that's what he's most proud of, is like being a productive member of society, not being a superstar. And I think he's amazing person, and that's where I get a lot of my energy from and wanting to tell his story.
I can see the energy. I can see the just the love of it. Thank you for coming on. You have made my night.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
And we will, again, thank you all for listening to the Football's Family Podcast.
Hey there, sports history fan. This is Arnie Chapman, aka the Football History Dude, and I hope that you enjoyed this recent episode presented by the Sports History Network and were able to learn some good old-fashioned sports history knowledge nuggets. I started the Sports History Network back in 2020 with the mission to help podcasters find a community of like-minded sports history nerds, as well as helping aspiring podcasters to start their own shows. We have a little bit over 30 shows on the network right now covering all sorts of sports history, but as far as I'm concerned, we're just at the toothpick in the ocean moment, that can't even figure it out because there's so much more coming. We wanted to create the ultimate headquarters for sports yesteryear, starting with Podcast Network and our website, but we're going to continue to move into other mediums as well. And here's the cool part, because we want you to be part of our team. So if you're interested in starting your own podcast, or maybe being a guest on one of our shows, or who knows, maybe even writing an article for us over on the website. Seriously, all you gotta do is reach out to us on the contact page over at sportshistorynetwork.com. You can be as technologically savvy as a Neanderthal tapping on a stone trying to figure out this whole hieroglyphics thing back in the day. Again, it doesn't matter, because even if you don't understand the whole podcast space, we have a production team that can pretty much help you out with doing everything. All you gotta do, head over to sportshistorynetwork.com, head to the contact page, fill it out. That message goes right to me, and I'll reach out to you as soon as I can. But for now, dude, I'm through if you're through.